This section is somewhat less important, but I want to expose it to you, so in case you do see some of this come up on the bar, or if you don't take a course on agency, there are some issues that come up when you don't know who the principal is. There are 4 types of principals. There are disclosed principals, where the specific identity is known to the third person. Hey, Mr. A, is this your company? Will you send out Drew, your project manager, to fix my pipes? Right? The third party knows that Mr. A is the owner. Second scenario, an unidentified or partially disclosed principal. P's specific identity is not known, but the third party does know that A is making the contract with T on behalf of some P. I call 1-800-FIX-PIPES. Drew answers the phone. Say, who's this? He goes, this is Drew. Oh, Drew? He goes, I'm a project manager. I can help you. Now, I don't know who Drew works for. I know that he's not the owner. He doesn't say I'm the owner of the company, but he's going to come and help me with my pipes. Now we have a situation called an unidentified or a partially disclosed principal. I know that Drew works for someone. He's a project manager. Right? He's not an owner. That's not a title that implies that he's the owner. But I don't know who he works for. I just called 1-800-FIX-PIPES. I got him. So now we have now he comes out and does the work. We're going to have a different set of analysis of what kind of duties are owed to a principal. In that situation, we have an undisclosed principal. Neither the fact of agency nor the specific identity of the principal is disclosed to T. So it turns out that Drew works for Mr. A. But I call up 1-800-FIX-PIPES, and he says, this is Drew. I'm in charge here. I'm going to come over and fix the pipes. I have no reason to know Drew isn't in charge. I don't know that there's a Mr. A or an X or an owner behind him. So that's an undisclosed principal. A disclosed principal, then, is when an agent acting with actual apparent authority makes a contract on behalf of a disclosed principal. The principal and the third party then become parties to the contract. So if I know that Drew works for Mr. A, and Drew comes to my house and says, I will fix the pipes for $800, and I say, sure, that's a contract, right? Yeah? I don't know. I mean, it's been like 5 hours since I taught contracts class, so I think I've forgotten. Drew comes to my house and says, I'll fix your pipes for $800, and I say, sure. Is that a contract? Yeah, probably. I mean, all else aside, who's that contract with? Well, if I called up 1-800-FIX-PIPES, and Drew said, hi, I'm Drew, a project manager for Mr. A Construction. I'll come over and take a look. We have a situation called a disclosed principal. And so if Drew comes over and says, we'll fix the pipes for $800, who is the contract with? The contract is with me and Mr. A. The principal and the third party are parties to the contract. And Drew is off the hook. Good job, Drew. You disclosed the principal, and so if the pipes burst, it's not you who has to come and fix them, it's Mr. A. Right? Because we had a situation of a disclosed principal where you were acting with actual authority and able to sign that contract. Now I call up again. This is the scenario where I call up, Drew answers, say, hey, I'm project manager. Doesn't say who he works for, and I don't ask. Silly of me. And Drew doesn't mention it. So now he's acting with actual or apparent authority. He was told by Mr. A, go fix Professor Ornberg's pipes. I don't know about Mr. A. I know that Drew says he's a project manager, so I know he doesn't own a company, but I don't know who does. Unidentified or partially disclosed principal. Comes to the house, says, Professor Ornberg, I'll fix your pipes for $100. I say, sure. Do we have a contract? Yes, we do. Who's the contract with? Well, now, since Drew hasn't disclosed his principal, the principal who has authorized him is on the hook, and so is Drew. So when the principal is unidentified or partially identified, the agent remains on the hook for the contract as a party to the contract. So now the pipes burst. If Mr. A doesn't want to fix them, you better get over there, because otherwise I'll sue you. Finally, we have an undisclosed principal. I don't even know the principal exists. Much more complicated and somewhat unusual situation. Unless excluded by contract, the principal is still a party to the contract, because Drew is acting with authorization. Mr. A said, go fix the pipes. The third party just didn't know. The agent and the third party are parties to the contract, so you're not off the hook. And the principal, if a party and the third party have the same rights and defenses to each other as if the principal made the contract personally, subject to da-da-da. In other words, the situation of an undisclosed principal is very much like an unidentified principal, except 3 means that the principal has some rights of contribution from Drew. So in addition to Drew being on the hook to me in situation 2, Drew has done an even worse job by not even stating that there was a Mr. A out there. And now Mr. A can go after Drew, and I can go after Drew. So our 3 different types of principals, again, are disclosed, unidentified, and undisclosed. Now finally we have an incapacitated or non-existent principal, where the principal does not exist at all, and we're pretending. Drew says, I work for Mr. A, and there is no Mr. A. It's like one of those Kevin Spacey movies or something. Unless the third party agrees otherwise, a person who makes a contract with a third party purportedly as an agent on behalf of a principal becomes a party to the contract if the purported agent knows or has reason to know that the purported principal does not exist or lacks capacity. In other words, Drew makes up Mr. A. I work for Mr. A. There is no Mr. A. Who's on the hook? Drew's on the hook. Does that make sense?